all the time. In fact, they lie about all the statistics. And that's why it's very difficult for business to operate in that kind of environment, because they really don't know what's going to happen, because they don't know whether the figures are right. Now, right now, official inflation is about 1.8%. Unofficial inflation is about 8.25%. This is not unusual. Happened 2 years ago. 2 years ago, they said inflation is 5.25%. Real inflation was over 14%. We're going to get that again this year. Most people don't see it yet. When did it start? Last May. Inflation that most people couldn't say got underway. Next year, what will it be? If they continue the programs that they've been doing, it'll probably go over 20%. They're trying, the Fed, is trying to withdraw money from the system. They do that in a number of ways. They just try to remove TARP monies from the system, about $700 billion in total. It looks like they've got about $300 billion, and they're moving towards getting more money to withdraw it from the system. The problem is, up pops the Treasury, and they say, look, we need you to buy $200 billion more worth of Treasuries. So there goes $200 billion, if they get the whole $700 billion back.
Right.
And then the president jumps up and says, wait a minute, I need another $500 billion in stimulus. So why don't you give that to me? So there's the Fed standing flat-footed, saying, my goodness, well, that's not going to work for us. What do we do next? And so what they do is they go into the Treasury market, and they start selling Treasuries that they have, which in turn are absorbed by banks. And this is called a repo procedure, and it's very complicated. But anyway, they can withdraw money from that system, but they only can withdraw so much. How much? Probably $100 billion.
Okay.
And they want to remove about $1.5 trillion. And so they're having a very hard time doing it. So inflation is coming. It's going to be higher. It's going to be led in the spring, I believe, by inflation for the cost of food, because the supplies of grains and beans that inevitably America has had for years and years is down to the bottom of the barrel. And because of that, they're not going to be able to export as much as they have in the past. You have things going on like in the Central Valley of California, because of some minnow, they've stopped giving water to the Central Valley, which is one of the most prolific producers of food in the nation.
Right.
That's adding to the problem. And so I think there's going to be a lot of food inflation. We've seen oil move back up to around $80. Will it go to 100? Maybe. Will it stay there? Probably. Will it go below 70 again? Probably not. And so you have these factors that are going to lead to higher inflation.
We've heard from a couple of people that they thought that oil would stabilize in the upper 60s, but part of that is based on the idea that many of these new energy technologies are going to be coming online in 2010 that we've been investing in, or companies have been investing in over the last couple of years, and it's going to take some of the pressure off of oil. Any signs on that in the international forecaster?
Well, I think that that's fair to say that will help. A diminution of the world economy would help as well, bring prices down. The problem you have major oil companies who are in the market, and they really run the market, and they can make oil whatever they want to make it.
Right.
And so a lot of what you see in oil, which is one of the most manipulated of all markets, not necessarily manipulated by government, but by the major oil companies.
Yeah, and they love to cry poverty too, and talk about how they're always victims of these international situations. But there never seems to be a real cause and effect for when the prices go up. and what they blame the price changes on.
That's an excellent way to put it. So the only conclusion you can come to is that there's an ulterior force which we don't quite understand as common Americans or common people of the world, that only can be explained by experts who suspect that there's manipulation in the oil market. And unfortunately, we have seen that just recently in prices again. How does Goldman Sachs tell us that they know oil's going to be $80 a barrel when it's selling at 60?
Right. Although a lot of people took a bath on Wall Street when they were betting on it going over 200, and then it didn't, and it actually went down. And as I understand it, there's some people that lost out on that futures market.
Big time. It was tremendous losses.
Yeah.
In fact, some of the hedge funds went under because of it.
Because of that.
And they don't necessarily know what's going on.
Well, the indication for me is always this, that when the prices go up, they go up right away. I mean, something happens. There's some story. There's a threat of another hurricane in the Gulf or something, and suddenly the prices spike literally overnight. But then they take a week to come down. So they can always go up really fast, but for some reason they inch downward every time they spike up. Let me ask you about this then. Could there be upheaval in the Middle East that could affect the production of oil, again, either genuinely or artificially driving up the price per barrel?
Well, I think in that case it would be genuine. And the chances of that are 8 out of 10. We've known, it's public knowledge that Israel has over and over again said we want to invade Iran because they're going to have atomic weapons or hydrogen weapons or nuclear weapons which could destroy us. And so the intelligence that I'm getting out of the Middle East tells me that something bad is going to happen this year. And that would include Iran. And what the thinking is among knowledgeable people in the Middle East is that it's not going to be confined to Iran and to Israel. It is the thinking that any place that there is a U.S. complex, military complex, or any nation which has accommodated or been trained by U.S. military will be attacked. And that would include Dubai and Saudi Arabia and so on. And many very wealthy, connected people in the Middle East who have big investments in that area are leaving. And they think that after the end of February that it's very possible that there may be a conflict. And so I think the chances are extremely strong. And we could be looking at extended conflict in the Middle East.
Well, just like, and pardon me this moment of skepticism, yes, if there was a conflict in the Middle East, it would be a genuine cause on the price of oil to go up. But that's to assume that the conflict is going to be genuine. And if people are forecasting a conflict, could it not be like how Goldman Sachs forecasts an oil change? That people know there's going to be a conflict coming up because they need a conflict coming up. We'll get back to that coming up with Robert Chapman of the International Forecaster and your calls on Coast to Coast.